Imagine a vibrant discussion between people that includes both openness and critical thought in the pursuit of truth. The Purchasing Truth podcast is an experience, a journey, an exploration of the impact that negative messages in politics and the media have on our families, community, society, and nation. Join your hosts, Bill Stierle and Tom Hazard, to discover new concepts and language strategies that will reveal effective ways of establishing truth. This podcast series will tackle current events, leadership challenges, healthcare confusion, integrity in business, and many other areas that affect us all. Gain clarity and understanding of the various truth perspectives. Welcome to Purchasing Truth.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Purchasing Truth. I'm Tom Hazard, along with your host, Bill Stierle. And Bill, we're recording this on a really big anniversary date, and which is January 6th, 2022. And certainly that day brings up a lot of things to think about, to be concerned about, to discuss regarding language and communication. And interestingly, before we get into some of that, we wanted to talk about something not as controversial, but nonetheless very relevant. Isn't that right? I mean, regarding how people have perspective. So I'll sort of set this up. So I had, a very, very difficult conversation with a customer of my company.
Yes.
That was so shocking. This customer had established beliefs that certain things about the internet or about websites, really, not just the internet, about websites are true that are just quite simply not true. I mean, to me, it was as if this customer was looking in the sky at 12 noon and seeing that bright spot of light in the sky and saying that's the moon, when it's the sun, and saying to me, well, isn't the customer always right? And putting me in a very difficult position, because in that moment, the customer was not right, but telling the customer that the customer is not right is not helpful in that moment, in that situation. It was a very difficult conversation, and it took all of my language and communication skills. I'm sure you would have done it a lot faster and more efficiently, Bill. But
you got there, though.
Took all my language and communication skills to get this customer sort of off the ledge of jumping off a steep cliff and ending our business relationship, which wouldn't have been good for either one of us.
Sure.
So anyway, but I'll tell you, the perspective was shocking in terms of how far away from truth it was.
Ooh, what do you do? How do you communicate with somebody that, looks up there and, and sees the sun and calls it the moon, or even closer to perspective, they might even look at the moon and say it's made out of cheese, or there's a secret moon base up there. I mean, there's all different kinds of beliefs and experiences that human beings bring into their consciousness through language, that there's no communication anywhere on the planet about aliens flying on a disc, that an alien ship looks like a disc, until the 1950s. In the 1950s was the first time that news media had that this looked like a saucer in the sky. And from then on, people started reporting dreams about and started saying, I was picked up with a disc. But before that, no one ever reported about a disc in the sky. Why is it that a word or a phrase or a belief gets into our culture or into our planet as a human being? And what winds up happening is we start speaking about it and dreaming about it and making it real. But really, there's a problem with that, because we spread our thoughts, our beliefs, very similar to the common cold or now the coronavirus. It seems like it's easy to spread, whereas other diseases are not as easy to spread.
Well, it seems
So,
like the disease of misinformation or disinformation, depending on
right.
what information is, has spread like wildfire.
The spread white like wildfire is a great belief because we have a metaphor about how and then now you are realizing that, oh my gosh, any kind of image associated with a behavior gets more traction, and that's called good marketing. So if somebody in the 1970s says the phrase, the customer is always right, as a form of customer service, well, that means that the customer's truth supersedes reality. And your customer had some beliefs about the internet or websites or
Yeah.
marketing or what podcasting was going to do for for them. And they were sure fighting for it. And what you didn't do in reference to the things you should have been doing, and they're slugging it out in their own head, and it's taking them down a thought path, a well-worn thought path, starting with the fuse. Beliefs are like a fuse towards a stick of dynamite.
Yeah. No, I agree. This
The,
is good.
no, it's like she has a belief that the customer is always right. There's no self-reflection in that. There's no, the customers are, if I have the belief the customers are right, I get to be a spoiled 4-year-old
Yes.
as an adult,
Yes.
or a ranting 12-year-old as a congressman. I mean, that's because a belief has that. And with complex issues like America, a phrase called "Make America Great Again" can stick.
Or stop the steal.
Stop the steal, the big
Right.
lie.
The big lie, or that the election was stolen. There's all this, voter fraud, so many votes that shouldn't have counted. I mean, oh my gosh, this is the tough thing that we thought was so threatening our democracy a year ago as this insurrection happened and people were driven to take action in the form of violence
Yeah.
to try to stop the counting of votes. And this, even though there's over 700 people now that have been prosecuted or in the process of being prosecuted or have been convicted, a combination of all,
Sure.
this movement continues to grow. I was looking at the statistics last night in the news that a year ago at this point, less than a majority of Republicans believed that the election had been stolen, believed that less than a majority of Republicans believed Donald Trump actually won the election.
Exactly.
And now a year later, 75% of Republicans believe the election was stolen. So this thing has really grown.
Yeah, you keep the messaging going and you keep on the messaging and keep on message, keep on message, keep on message, keep on message. And the voter, just to take the customer is always right to the phrase, the voter is always right, is you don't have to change the voter's belief. You just got to get the voter to vote for you. So if your job as a politician is not, or even as a newscaster, is not these days, is not to inform the consumer about accurate facts. It's to get advertising revenue. That's the job. So when a person says CNN ratings is the ratings on CNN are terrible, that's because people don't want to watch the truth and deal with a complex issue. Who wants to do that? Or watch some of the shows that CNN put up 24/7 covered of whoever speaking of wherever. It's like it's you're capturing this person, and it gets boring because there's a realization that the person is actually not saying anything. and the person is actually not able to make a point, and that I voted for an illusion. This person is ranting, and I can't listen to this person rant. There you
There's
go.
a lot of ranting and a lot of opinion that happens in this 24-hour news, world we live in. It's interesting, Bill. I agree with you there, what you said about that, the news, accurate reporting of the news and the facts is really a lost art, at least from a point of observation of me looking at a lot of news, and just yesterday, a point to this, I don't know, you probably have seen the news, the former CEO of Theranos, which was this company in Silicon Valley, who was, revolutionary. She was considered the next Steve Jobs, Elizabeth Holmes. Do you know this one?
No, I don't know the story.
Oh my gosh. There's a whole HBO documentary on it you have to see, which about the Silicon Valley startup, which was valued at about $9 billion in its heyday, and it was all built on a lie. It was the CEO said, "Oh, we're gonna," at Theranos is the company, that this company supposedly had developed technology that you could do all your blood analysis from the prick of a finger and a drop of blood, instead of having to go in and put your arm and have them take vials and vials of blood for all these different tests. Anyway, it all ended up being a fraud and a charade, and very famous people like George Shultz, former Secretary of State, invested in the company, and Warren Buffett invested. Everybody, big people invested. Nobody really verified that the technology was good. Anyway, she's been on trial. This whole thing came crashing years ago. It's a wonderful documentary. I'll put the link in the show notes for people to see it. And Bill, you ought to watch it too, because you'd find it fascinating from a language and communication perspective. Anyway, I'm interested in it from a business perspective. She's been on trial for wire fraud and all sorts of other fraud of investors. And verdict came down like this week, Monday, I think.
Wow.
And she was guilty only on a couple counts. My point in this is not to, back to the point of news reporting, is that it made news that she was convicted on a couple of counts. She was acquitted on some accounts, and some accounts the jury couldn't reach a decision. The news didn't report some of the basic facts, like when she's going to be sentenced. What is the likely amount of jail time she's really going to get? Things that you often hear in news reports, but the news didn't care to report that. They just wanted to report that she was guilty and these famous people had invested in the company and were defrauded. And then they leave these other really useful facts on the sidelines. They're a casualty of the sensational part of the story. So it's, to me, anyway, that what you said, and I know we didn't plan on talking about this. I kind of hijacked some of our discussion here with that, but something you said about the media reporting and not, always reporting all the facts and maybe not being, it sort of triggered something and reminded me, because I was just talking about that last night.
If I'm looking at this from a business perspective, it's probably better from a financial perspective for the media not to give all of the answers so they can drag out the story. I'm just trying to take a half step back and try to empathize with media. Okay, so shall I give the listener all of the answers and get to closure because that's what they need? Or shall I just give them this much and then say, tune in tomorrow and I'll give you a little more, and turn on tomorrow and I'll give you a little more? And they're withholding the resolution or the truth, either because they're hiding it or because they are drawing it out. They would rather draw it out, and certain media outlets would rather draw it out rather than get it to solution, because they can get more coverage that way and fill more time. And certain media outlets would rather just not deal with it because their listener, it's too much for their listener. It is too complex.
Wow. Well, I'm sure you're right that that's part of why they don't provide all the information that I would say they would have in Walter Cronkite's day or Dan Rather's day. Maybe they would have when it's
Yeah.
not a 24-hour news cycle and you're watching only a half an hour news in the
Yeah.
evening and you're not going
Murrow.
to get it till the next day.
Right.
All right, but let's come back to January 6th for a second, because it was very interesting in the run up to this anniversary. I did see another piece on CNN, some video reporting where this correspondent, and ironically, I think the guy is Irish or something, the reporter, or of Irish heritage. He's got a nice thick accent, but he always is going in to the lion's den of Trump rallies and Trump supporters, not in a comedic way, the way Jordan Klepper does, but in a serious way, just trying to ask questions and try to see what people's truth is. And he's asking people very, very recently, I mean, in the last week or two, Trump supporters, trying to get them to admit Trump didn't win the election. And 90% of them that even maybe, yeah, I think he talked to about 10 people in this interview. So I think it's fair to say 90% of them all say, no, Trump absolutely won the election. Joe Biden didn't win the election. I mean, so many of these people, and only one at the very end was someone who looked at it from more of a rational place. And she was just, no, she's more a supporter of Trump and Trump policies. But yeah, we should move on and admit that Trump lost the 2020 election. I'm not here about the 2020 election. I'm here about the next election and to support the candidate I want. So there was not rational is the wrong word. There was a perspective more in alignment with truth of what happened in the 2020 election, where most of the Trump supporters, and as I mentioned to you, most Republicans who've been polled, 75% of that people in that poll said they believe the election was stolen and Trump actually won it in 2020. How does that happen when even yesterday, Bill, and this isn't going to get any oxygen, Maricopa County, Arizona, the new head of the elections in Maricopa County, who was elected in 2020, just recently, finally buried this issue or ended it in Maricopa County, that all the reviews have been done, all the Cyber Ninja stuff. It was their final report on the 2020 election saying there was no fraud. The only thing that they found is that 50 votes were accidentally tabulated twice by a young election worker who made a mistake, an honest mistake, and tabulated 50 votes twice. That's it. And, Biden won Maricopa County or Arizona, I guess, by more than 10,000 votes. So they debunked everything. They reviewed it all. They said, there's no fraud. Biden won in Arizona, but none of these, either Trump supporters or Republicans who've been polled are paying attention to that. It doesn't mean it doesn't get any perspective in their minds.
Yeah. There's no truth because there's no trust.
And we're in a dangerous place in America because of this, don't you think? If we can't, as a nation, agree, if both sides cannot agree that our election systems are sound, have integrity, and that the answer to truth about elections is to count the votes, that's really the foundation of our nation.
Yeah, it's really, I think the hard part about it is because so much of a person's mindset, if we just adjust the metaphor here a little bit, and then we'll get to solution, is what to do about it, is in a football game or a basketball game, you can see if the person made the basket or scored the touchdown right there on the screen or in live. You can watch it take place. And at the end of the game, half of the fans, the ones that are for the team that lost, are feeling disappointment. And half of the fans are feeling delighted because their team won that game. And then the idea is to be good about losing. We lost because they had a stronger message, had more skill, had more talent. One of our guys fell down. Yes, the ref made a bad call, but that's a part of the game. So the 50 votes are the ref made one bad call, not the ref made one bad call. And that means that the whole game should be thrown out and replayed. Now, think about how that would work in the NFL. And I always come back to this game.
I knew you're coming back to it. This is the Saints and the Rams.
The Saints and the Rams. So that bad call. I'm a Saints fan. I'm going to go, hey, play the game again then. Play it again. I want the game played. No, recount the game. No, fire the ref. No, change the ref. Change the ref that is going to call the game in my favor. That's the mindset that's being cultivated. All right. So that's the problem, is the cultivation of the mind. Yeah. So now let's figure out if we can get a way out of this. And the way out of this is really, how do you give compassion and empathy for somebody that's feeling the simplest feeling of all, disappointment? How do you give empathy for that? How do you console that person? And then the person feels disappointment, then has a judgment. The judgment is that our team should have won. We have better players. We have better policies. I don't like the policies of the person that won.
Or I don't like the policy of the state that allowed people to vote by mail, and they have a belief that that's not fair.
That's not fair. One state, because they're voting by mail, that means there can be fraud in the mail system. And this has been so like gone over and over again about the systems that are checking. Now the other side's going to listen to me and go like, well, you're just believing a false narrative. But really, how do we know that there's not monkey business going on? That needs empathy to it. Yeah. It doesn't need problem solving to it. It's empathy. It's like you would like trust in your elections. And it sounds like that you would be a person that would maybe need to go and experience what trust looks like by going and seeing how the vote process is doing and being a good citizen by being a part of the vote counting team. Would you be willing to be a part? No, it's rigged. Well, why don't you go check it then? No, I trust, Sean Hannity. I trust these people. They're telling me it's rigged. Well, why don't you go check? Why don't you vote for it? Why don't you do what you can? That
message, that doubt and skepticism that's been sown into voting by mail is been, from a marketing perspective, done masterfully. I mean, it really has, because I remember even well before the 2020 election, either within the context of the 2016 election or 2018 midterms, on the run up to well before 2020,
yes,
there were two senators from, I think, Oregon, one Republican, one Democrat, and they both agreed 100%. And I remember the interview where they're talking about, hey, what we've done in Oregon is a model for the nation. Every registered citizen eligible to vote gets a ballot in the mail, and they all vote. And it's the system works incredibly well. You can find if there's fraud by, checking the votes that come in against the list of voter registrations. And it's so easy to do. And it was a model for the nation. And eventually California went the same way as we got into the pandemic. It didn't happen right away. Since the pandemic, every registered voter in California gets a ballot. You can mail it in, or you can carry it in to the polling place and vote and turn it in and vote on the machine if you want to. And all of this stuff should be apolitical. All this stuff should just be nonpartisan. And the Republicans, especially Trump and his, team and supporters, and now many supporters in national office of the House of Representatives and Senators, are all jumping on this bandwagon that, well, we need to make sure every vote counts, and make sure that there is integrity in the voting system, which is sowing seeds of doubt that there is not integrity in the voting system, and casting doubt on the results of the 2020 election.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a non-story. And how do you cover a non-story? Because it doesn't make you any money. A story makes you money. A non-story doesn't make you money. A fact does not sell well. It doesn't sell well because otherwise you and I can stare at the moon and go like, that's the moon. That's the moon up there. The moon has these features to it. That's what's in the moon. But what sells is that, oh, there's an alien base on the dark side of the moon, and it's only been covered by these hazy looking pictures, and the moon is actually hollow. And there's actually a base inside the dark side of the moon, and you can kind of see some spaceships flying off of it. If you look hard enough, it's like, oh my gosh, it's without any evidence. I've just polluted our minds right now with a story about the moon and there being a base on the other side of it, that it's hollow. I mean,
and when it happens, when your guy lost the election and your guy doesn't want to leave the White House, and he
right,
uses all of this and disinformation of election fraud, he whips everybody up into a violent mob that
yeah,
does what we had
concede.
happen a year ago.
Yeah, concede and try again next time. Concede and try again next time. But what he's doing is that he's stirring it up and bringing that thing there, and he gets more mileage out of canceling something than he does about doing something. He gets more impressions. So they were going to counter program today.
Yeah, he was going to have some sort of an event, right?
Today in Mar-a-Lago, and they said, no, we're going to cancel it. And oh my God, they're canceling the event. That means that no, he did that to hold, the media by the nostrils. I mean, and he's just yanking the media around by the nostrils, going like, and oh, we're going to do something in Arizona. And then all of a sudden they're going to do something in Arizona. It's literally moving to the next marketing opportunity and trying to build momentum that way. What's going to happen in Arizona is something we got to get to see, because that's when more is going to be revealed. There's no more that's going to be revealed. And I feel concerned, because where this leaves their devoted followers, and it's good to be a devoted fan. There are many teams in the NFL that have never made it to the Super Bowl
that have very devoted fans.
Cleveland
Browns, case in point.
There we go. I mean, they got to the AFC Championship, and all of a sudden Denver's going. It's like, so anyways. So okay, all right. So I digress. So I feel disappointment and sadness about how that the need for truth and trust can't be met, because doubt and skepticism, those two feelings, those two molecules, are dominating this space. And where we can really kind of stick the landing here is that the person needing empathy about how the need for truth and trust is not met, and then doing something about truth and trust, which is a part of the feeling that many Americans feel that they're invigorating, is the feeling of helplessness about their circumstances. And why are they helpless about the external? Because the world is changing, the economy is changing, the workplace is changing, our behaviors, our habits are changing, not just because of the economy, but because of pandemic, because of the various influence from the world things. And people are just going, I want to shrink back to something I know. I just want the 1950s and the 1960s to be back again. The 50s. I want that sweet spots between like 1953 and 1963. I want that back again. I want that thing. That's when America was a great again. Yeah, there was the racist thing. Yeah, there was the social unrest that came after that. But I want that experience of, America. And that was that. And that, post World War II, when we could feel good about, hey, we did something good, because the truth is that, here was a fascist regime that killed a bunch of people, millions of people. And we were on the side of fighting for, and the sacrifice was one of respect and honor and loyalty to country and loyalty to an ideal. and we could talk more about how do we as a nation restore respect for the things we do well, and pride in the things that we contribute that are that really add value, to ourselves and to others, to others in the nation. We've got to get back to leading, and this is not leading. This is not leadership. This is not, it's not going anywhere. It's this style of leadership doesn't go anywhere.
It's bringing us closer to authoritarianism, really.
And that style of leadership has a whole nother set of problems that that it looks good to start, but boy, it just gets worse and worse as it goes. And there's plenty of history to look at this. It's not like I'm making this up.
No, there are plenty of examples through history.
It doesn't go as well there. It goes better when people collaborate, cooperate, and participate. And it goes better when there's a common agreement on facts and a common set of rules and laws that apply evenly to others. And we're not getting that right now on multiple levels. So
I think it's safe to say there's more to come on this, Bill.
Absolutely. And having compassion and empathy for the person that's bought into the marketing and sales and politics has become very financially valuable for the news outlets. Politics has become very, very, you make more money out of conflict than you do out of honesty. And it's better to stretch the truth rather than stand for the truth. So, and I'm squinting as I say it, but it's something we got to get back to, and that's my hope.
Mine too, Bill. Okay. Yeah. Well, thanks very much. I appreciate you sharing your thoughts with us today.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for listening.
Thank you for listening to this Purchasing Truth podcast. We trust that you have enjoyed this engaging and thought-provoking conversation. Our hope is that you've received value, found clarity, and broadened your truth perspective in this episode. If you did, leave us a review or visit our website, purchasingtruth.com. Join us again for another informative and content-rich discussion here at the Purchasing Truth podcast. Don't just accept whatever information comes your way. Join the discussion. Discover your own voice. Purchase your own truth.